On Moses Kotane, the longest-serving General Secretary of the SACP. The title is Moses Kotane Celebrating the Life of the Revolutionary Giant. This is presented, of course, virtual comrades. Moses Kotane, as you all know, was born in Tamputstad in Rustenburg, district of Western Transvaal on 9th August in 1905. Kotane was from a devout family of Christian peasants from Tswana origin, largely self-taught. He received only a few years of schooling but became an instillable reader. Later, as a young worker, he enrolled in the communist-run night school in Ferreirastown, Johannesburg, where he became known for his ability to master the most abstract political writing, starting to work at 17 in Krugersdorp. What I want to take in from this background is that at the Communist Party of South Africa, he received education in the night school at SET and political training through work in the ANC and the trade union, which made it possible for him to comprehend the underlying nature of the South African political conditions and their meaning. Moses Kotane's example demonstrates the importance of both the capacity and the capability the party possessed, which produced comrades with cutting-edge political thinking. Emphasizing the point at the content and quality of the content and quality of the education required to arm working people and the party members, Moses Kotane had this to say. He had this to say, I quote, "Proper education is a mirror in which man sees the world around him and learns to understand it. The right kind of education enables man to see what the world has been, what is, and how it can change to suit him or his way of living. Education can be and has used to be baffled the minds of the common people. But education can also be used as an important instrument in the struggle for freedom and human progress. It is this kind of education we need. We must learn geography to know the universe, that there are other countries beside our own, and to know the people of different nationalities inhabiting these countries. Our revolutionary icon, President Mandela, once described both Moses Kotane and J.P. Marx as follows, and he said, I quote, "They were men of great intellect and confidence who taught us," meaning Mandela and others, "through force of example, that mere formal education was not the real test of political leadership." Close quote. Michael Dingake on Moses Kotane on an extract from his book titled Better to Die on One's Feet, which was launched at the Nelson Mandela Foundation on 11 August 2015, 5:30 and 6 o'clock. He says, and I quote, that's Michael Dingake on his book, "Kotane impressed me as a different type of leader, outwardly aloof, abrupt, authoritarian, and haughty. Malume, as uncle as he was commonly known, imparted the understanding of socialism to me as not textbook on Marxism could ever do. We interacted through informal chats and later formally in the meetings, mainly district conferences, and at one party national conference, which adopted the peculiar SACP policy document, which policy document was titled The Road to South African Freedom in 1962. Who was Moses Kotane, and why do we refer to him as the chief architect of the struggle? These were the questions posed by Dr. Blade Nzimande, South African Minister of Transport then and currently SACP General Secretary, on Thursday, 31 May 2018. Speaking at the inaugural Moses Kotane Memorial Lecture at the University of Johannesburg, UJ, Dr. Nzimande pointed out that Kotane dedicated his life to the struggle for South African freedom and ultimately with the struggle for working class power and socialism. Kotane was, said Nzimande, Kotane was not only architect. There were several, but Moses Kotane, more than any other individual, was the one who put the struggle on the course through which apartheid was eventually to be defeated. To understand what they accomplished, we must understand the history of our movement before he came onto the scene, because what he did cannot be seen in isolation from earlier events and the accomplishment of earlier leadership of our struggle and members of the liberation movement, said Dr. Nzimande. Former President Jacob Zuma says, defining Kotane, I quote, Kotane was a well-rounded intellectual and was dedicated to the liberation struggle. Through him, we want to inspire all our youth in particular to read, work hard, and rise through leadership of the organization through the ranks, through commitment, dedication, and hard work. In 1928, as we are told, he joined the ANC, but found disappointingly ineffectual organization. The same year, he joined the African Bakers Union, an affiliate of the new Federation of Non-European Trade Unions, then being built up by the Communist Party, as we know. Kotane is always referred to as the embodiment of the alliance, organizationally, because he led and represented the ANC, SACP, and COSATU at the same period and without compromising any of the three organizations. The lesson relevant for the alliance in the country, but more in our province, it's whether there are any ideological, political, and organizational reasons why it appears as impossible or impractical, leading in all three formations, including SANCO, in the current epoch of our NDR. A more urgent need is for the alliance to ensure that members of the three independent formations are made to understand the alliance, historical, current, and its necessity to be strengthened. The question of the reconfiguration of the alliance needs special attention. Interestingly, in our province, the ANC current IPC convener, Comrade Susan Danji, openly accepted that as per what they had been guided in the ANC-NEC deliberations on the question of reconfiguration of the alliance, she believed that the question of alliance reconfiguration was no longer a question of the SACP alone. In 1929, Kotane joined the Communist Party of South Africa and soon became both the vice chairman of the Trade Union Federation and a member of the party Politburo. In 1931, he became a full-time party functionary, working as both a party and a union organizer. He also set the Umsebenzi, the communist paper then edited by Edward Hawkes. This period is when the revolution throughout the globe was deliberating on the national question and the revolutions in the colonies and semi-colonies. This was termed as the Black Thesis Republic decision. Comintern became central in these deliberations, ideologically and politically, as it crafted the world guiding resolution. At the Second Congress of the Comintern in July 1920, a special commission was appointed to study the national and colonial question and to prepare appropriate guidelines for future Comintern policies. The Commission based its investigation and recommendations extensively on a draft thesis presented by Lenin at the Congress. Lenin argued that Comintern must support for the liberation of colonies, would accelerate the victory of proletarian overwhelmed capitalism, an eventuality upon which the liberation of the colonies depended. What was needed in an alliance between the proletariat of the advanced countries and the toiling masses of the colonies to affect the overthrow of the bourgeoisie and landowners. Lenin further replaced the formulation bourgeoisie democratic with the revolutionary nationalists, thus acknowledging the revolutionary elements in a national struggle. Communists should make themselves the leaders of the working masses and practice collaboration with the nationalist bourgeoisie for limited objectives. At the same time, strive to drive the national revolution in a socialist direction. The question was, how should a communist party go about creating a mass organization which would carry out national liberation and then proceed to a socialist revolution? This created some challenges in the communist movement across the globe. The two-stage theory developed out of lack of ideological and practical understanding of the meaning, in brackets, then proceed to a socialist revolution. As one of the Communist Party most promising African recruits, in a period when the party was promoting the goal of a native republic, Kotane was offered an opportunity to go to Soviet Union, and for a year in the early 1930s, he studied at the Lenin School in Moscow. In 1935, because of an ideological dispute with Lazar Bach, then chairman of the SAC Communist Party then, Kotane was removed from the party's political bureau. He was later restored to this position, however, and in 1939, he became the General Secretary of the Communist Party of South Africa, a post he continued to hold through Communist Party of South Africa, subsequently faced his illegalities and exile. Our province is deeply embroiled in factionalism, which, unlike Kotane and Lazar disagreement, which was an ideological dispute, ours in the province within the liberation movement, it's predominantly informed by the interest of individuals or dominance of the individuals over the organizational identity or patronage deployment system. The then Secretary General of the ANC, Comrade Gwede Mantashe, says about our province in a Congress report, I quote, "You will find that in some regions, the most dominant is the question of divisions, and the problem is that they are locked into factions instead of working for the ANC. That is the biggest challenge. So we are going to be dealing with that in details." Mantashe says, factionalism is weakening the party. What we should remedy in the Northwest Province is to help members of the ANC understand that the ANC is bigger than groupings and they must come out that and join the ANC. You see, the split when you become loyalist of an individual weakens the party, close quote. In a letter from prison to Kabwe Consultative Conference in 1985, Utadu Nelson Mandela describes unity in the ANC as the bedrock upon which the ANC was founded. As the province and the liberation movement, we can also learn from what Comrade Zamani Sol said when he described factionalism. He said, and I quote, "Factions are counter-revolutionary, generate unwanted contradictions within the ANC that tend to reverse revolutionary gains, stall and retard progress, compromise organizational and ideological integrity of the party, are arrogant, corrupt, replicate and mutate, are mean-spirited, vindictive, disrespectful, and lack legitimacy," close quote. Kotane combined his strong conviction as a Marxist with a commitment of the goal to nationalism and a firm belief in the importance of an African leadership and initiative in the struggle for equal rights as he rose to leading position in both the Communist Party and the ANC. His loyalty to one organization did not appear to be subordinated to his loyalty to the other. Taking some interesting arguments from Moses Kotane's letter, 23 February 1934, the Craddock letter. These are the few that I'm taking, quote, that the party then is beyond the realm of realities. We are simply theoretical and our theory is less connected with practice, close quote. The second one, socialism, the proletarian revolution to our rural masses, the majority, is but a vague expression which sounds more as a dream than a reality. To them it sounds like the land of Canaan, which can be attained only after death, close quote. The last one, our provincial structures in the province should pay attention to the above quotes, three of them, though from the 1934 Craddock letter, but still remain ideological, political, and organizationally relevant in our party life in the province. Even staunch anti-communists in the ANC held him, Kotane, in high regard for his clear-headedness as a thinker and his courage and pragmatic as a leader. At all times, comrades should be guided not by personal feelings, but by the Communist Manifesto, especially on the chapter dealing with communist and other proletarian parties. The issue there is the communists are distinguished from the other working class parties by this only and one: in the national struggle of the proletarian of the different countries, they point out and bring to the front the common interest of the entire proletariat, independently of all nationalities. 2. In the various stages of development, which the struggle of the working class against the bourgeoisie has to pass through, they always, everywhere, represent the interest of the movement as a whole. The immediate aim of the communists is the same as that of other proletarian parties: formation of the proletariat into a class, overthrow of the bourgeoisie's supremacy, conquer of political power by the proletariat. Following the 1946 mine workers' strike, he was subjected within the leadership of the Communist Party to 2 years of futile legal proceedings, while the Smuts government tried to demonstrate its determination to deal with red menace, as they said. When the Communist Party was banned in 1950, Kotane moved from Cape Town, which had been the party's headquarters, to Johannesburg, where he opened a furniture business in Alexandra Township. He was one of the first to be banned under the Suppression of Communism Act. But he ignored his ban, to speak in support of the Defiance campaign in June 1952, and was arrested with one of the first batches of the Defiers. Sometimes critical of cautious leadership in the ANC, he did not hesitate to thrust himself forward as an exemplary of militancy. In December 1952, he was tried with the other leaders of the Defiance Campaign and given a 9-month suspended sentence. Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, during his address on the 56th anniversary of the revolutionary trial, says, I quote, "When the Nationalist Party came into power in 1948, it signaled its intention of unleashing fascist repression by promulgating the Suppression of Communism Act. The entire democratic movement sensed, correctly so, that there would be serious repression as disparate attempts are made to incapacitate and destroy all revolutionary forces that were ranged against the inhumane system of apartheid and colonialism. In response, the Communist Party of South Africa preemptively decided to voluntarily disband. Comrade Rusty Bernstein records that the meeting to disband the Communist Party of South Africa was very short. He recalls that Moses Kotane just said, as from now, today, the Communist Party is dissolved. They thought that the leadership had plan B and there was none. As correctly sensed by the democratic movement and the Communist Party in particular, the apartheid government wasted no time in banning and banishing freedom fighters throughout the length and breadth of our country. During the 1960s state of emergency, Moses Kotane was detained for 4 months, and in later 1962, he was placed under 24-hour house arrest. In early 1963, he left South Africa for Tanzania, where he became the Treasurer General of the ANC in exile. In elections held in Tanzania in April 1969, he was returned to the National Executive Committee of the ANC. He later suffered a stroke and went for treatment to Moscow, where he remained until his death in 1978. As we speak, today we're celebrating Africa Day. This therefore also signifies the extent to which our revolution has had an internationalist leg in terms of 4 pillars of our struggle as they were defined by them. The dominant and primary challenge facing the world today is the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, as known as the coronavirus. Is an ongoing pandemic of coronavirus 2019 caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome. Coronavirus, the outbreak was first identified in Wuhan, in China, in December 2019. The World Health Organization declared the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern on 30 January and a pandemic on the 11th of March 2020. The global response to this pandemic is, however, compromised by the origin and the placement of trade wars between China and the US. This was very clear on how US reacted when the outbreak started in China. This became worse in time. The US reaction on the World Health Organization funding question, and later the accusation leveled by the US to both China and World Health Organization. What happened is that US decided to withdraw funding. As US decided to withdraw, China decided to add more on its funding. David Harvey writes, in an anti-capitalist politics in the times COVID-19, he says, and I quote, "When on 26th of January 2020 I first read of a coronavirus that was gaining ground in China, I immediately thought of the repercussions of the global dynamics of capitalist accumulation. I knew from my immediate thought of the repercussions, studies of economic model, that blockages and disruptions in the continuing of capital flow would result in devaluations, and that if devaluation become widespread and deep, that would signal the onset of the crisis. When COVID-19 appeared, a dominant reaction was to depict it as SARS, repeat, rendering the panic redundant. The fact that the epidemic raged in China, which quickly and ruthlessly moved to contain its impact, also led the rest of the world to erroneously treat the problem as sometimes going on over there, and therefore out of sight and mind, accompanied by some troubling signals of anti-Chinese xenophobia in the certain parts of the world, like the US. The spike which the virus put into other triumphant Chinese growth story was even greeted with glee, great delight in certain circles of triumph administration. This virus was declared as public enemy number 1 by World Health Organization. Response of nations differs from nation to nation, but response of people is critical. That communities must be the ones who stand up and says no to spreading coronavirus. Communities must be the ones who stand up and say we shall ensure that our communities remain safe. There's no government that would police successfully response of communities to any other virus. Again, on an international perspective, and the fact that Kotane was an internationalist, and the fact that socialism is an international struggle, we must also welcome with solidarity the deployment of the Cuban doctors again in the world and also in South Africa to help nations resolve the challenge of COVID-19. Kotane and many of the revolutionary movement stalwarts are best described by Karl Marx on his letter titled Reflections of a Young Man in the Choice of Profession, when he says, and I quote, "If we have chosen the position in life in which we can most of all work for mankind, no burdens can bow us down, because they are sacrifices for the benefits of all. Then we shall experience no petty, limited, selfish joy, but our happiness will belong to millions. Our deeds will live on quiet but perpetual at work, and over our ashes will be shed the hot tears of noble gold. This then becomes our provincial memory of Mutadu Moses Kotane, Malume Moses Kotane, the longest serving ever General Secretary of the SACP and the General Secretary of the Communist Party then, which is SACP, as a predecessor. Thank you very much.